So, harmony. Those of you who know me know that, or may know, that I've always had a thing about having the latest thing. I was in technology as a journalist and an editor, and I always liked the latest thing, which made it particularly peculiar for me when Jan and Stephen and I decided on the theme, cultivating harmony, that the first thing that came into my mind was that most old-fashioned of all things, barbershop quartets. I hadn't really thought much about barbershop quartets, and one reason was they seemed so old and out of date, and I thought the songs were silly and simplistic. Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer, do. I'm half crazy, really, half crazy, all for the love of you. I mean, give me a break. But I remembered also quite vividly, quite a number of years ago, falling into a trance, listening to a barbershop quartet. And I realized, much to my surprise, that I was smiling. I was really digging that barbershop quartet. And I realized that while I still was finding the lyrics silly, it was the harmony, that beautiful harmony that was making me smile. It made me feel good. I loved how the four voices, and in a barbershop quartet, I've come to learn there are two tenors, a baritone, and a bass from high to low. And they blended so beautifully together. And you know, they weren't always singing the same note. And this is an important thing that I'll touch on a little later. They weren't always singing the same note, and they didn't all come in on the same bar, but they blended just gorgeously. Now, this is harmonious singing, but what exactly is harmony in the context of our lives and our practice? Well, another thing some of you know about me is I'm a word nerd. As I mentioned, I spent my career as an editor and a writer. And so as a word nerd, I went to that font of all Buddhist information, Google, and I looked up what did the Buddhists say about harmony. And I came across at a Buddhist group site. I'm not even sure what the group was because they never said. It was just some Buddhist group. But they had a lovely definition. I suspect it's from the suttas, but they didn't say that. Harmony, or avaroda in Pali, is the smooth, pleasant, and non-contentious functioning together of two or more things. The smooth, pleasant, and non-contentious blending together of two or more things. Nice, but it still didn't do it for me. And then I went off in another direction. Welcome to my mind. It's not always pretty in there. I went off in another direction. Why do we care about harmony? And I didn't have an answer to that until right after lunch when I was walking up the steps, and it's happened now 3 retreats in a row. I saw just the quote put up by Maureen with a little help, I think, from Joy. And I'm going to change one word in this quote, and I think it actually makes it more understandable in what William Wordsworth thought. With a mind made quiet by the power of harmony and the deep power of joy, we see into the life of things. Let me read that again. He said with an eye made quiet, but I think what little I know of Wordsworth, I don't think I'm taking him out of context by changing eye to mind. With a mind made quiet by the power of harmony and the deep power of joy, we see into the life of things. We look deeply, we see deeply. Someday I'm going to come to this retreat and not prepare anything for my talk, and I'm just going to go and pick off these quotes. The third year in a row, this is. But it still didn't, it still wasn't enough for me. And then all of a sudden I realized that harmony isn't something that lends itself to definition, but we know it when we see it. It's kind of like love that way, isn't it? You can define love till the cows come home, but you don't know it until you feel it. With harmony and with love, we feel it. It's an energy. It's a vibration in our bodies. How can you define a vibration? But it is so important, and now I understand why, because it helps us see to the heart of things. So we know harmony when we feel it, when we feel the vibration, the energy of the harmony, And I realized that that's what I was appreciating with the barbershop quartet. I could feel it. I could feel the harmony. Now, we can often feel harmony in the various activities that we do in life. For me, one of those activities where I'm prone to feel harmony is being in nature. Mary and I live in the woods, and it's just so wonderful just to step out our door and feel the harmony of being in the woods, being in nature. Sometimes I feel harmony when I'm with people I love, whether we're conversing, playing, just being quiet together, or meditating, and getting along. Another physical way we can feel harmony is by practicing mindful movement of the body, Qigong. It's a wonderful, perfect example that works of harmony that works so powerfully at the energetic level to bring the various energies within us into harmony. Yoga, same thing, Tai Chi, many other activities like that. Those are all wonderful things to do, wonderful practices in which we can feel harmony, literally feel harmony in our lives. But I'd like to talk tonight about how some of the specific practices or specific elements of our practice, our Buddhist practice, our mindfulness practice, whatever you choose to call your own practice, how they can nurture, open the way, open the door to harmony. And we can nurture that in the same way that a skillful gardener nurtures the soil so that plants can grow so beautifully. So I'd like to take the rest of my time tonight, and maybe for the rest of my life, and talk about how we can practice in a way that helps minimize the things that take us away from harmony and open the door to harmony, because we can't create harmony. Harmony is something we feel, it's something we, at some level, intuit, but it's not something we can create. In that regard, it's a little bit like wisdom. It takes practice. So imagine that we're all gathered here together this weekend, not to practice mindfulness and share the teachings of the Buddha, but to sing barbershop quartet harmonies. Maybe even Daisy Daisy, or my favorite, Sweet Adeline, because it's my favorite because Mary's and my granddaughter is Sweet Adeline. And so we come here Friday morning. After we go through the preliminaries, we start singing. And if we haven't done this before, it won't be very harmonious at first. But as we practice and practice, our singing together could become more harmonious. And it's the same way with our practice. Opening the door to harmony, nurturing harmony does take practice. So, and I'd like to begin by talking about what some of those practices are. These are in marketing. These days it's hard to see an ad, without the word hand-picked in it. Come into our store and we'll give you a hand-picked basket of soap or whatever. So these are hand-picked practices that I feel both minimize the things that pull us away from harmony and help us nurture the soil of our being so that we can feel harmony. And I'm going to start with the most foundational of all of our practices, which is often called stopping. Stopping is necessary, and we've been doing it hopefully all weekend in our meditations. And stopping is necessary before the practice can take us deeper in any way. Now, we've all experienced this weekend, maybe in the last 10 minutes, that our minds can be filled with a lot of this and that, sometimes a real lot of this and that. The ongoing gerbil wheel thinking that we both get lost in and that leads automatically and habitually to more thoughts, which lead to more thoughts, to more thoughts. It's like a nuclear chain reaction, what can happen in our mind. And some of these thoughts will lead to reactivity and unskillful action. So our foundational practice in any tradition of Buddhism is stopping, sometimes called shamatha, sometimes called concentration. And the Buddha and all the Buddhist teachers since the Buddha start there. We begin by connecting into our body, feeling into our body. And I can't emphasize that enough. Our practice is not a mental exercise. It's also, and sometimes primarily, a body exercise. We do this for the simple reason, you've heard this before, our body is always in the present moment. Our minds, not so much, right? We're in the past, the future. So we begin our meditations by becoming aware of the felt sensations in our body. That's how we began this morning. Are we cold? Are we hot? Are we achy and pain? Are we vibrating with energy? Or do we feel numb and flat? Are we feeling vibrant or exhausted? Or some combination of all of those things. Then we narrow our attention even more by feeling into the physical sensations of breathing, chest rising and falling, belly rising and falling, shoulders rising and falling. And this is an aside. I talk about the breath, and I think that's probably what most practitioners do, but there are other ways of doing it. I learned to meditate in 1971 in TM, and we used a sound, an internal sound. Some people who are particularly visual need to visualize as the object of their meditation an object, a statue of the Buddha or a color. It's all good because all of these methods bring us back to the present moment. Whatever technique you use, the purpose is just that, to come back to the present moment. And the process of doing that allows us to notice all the mental traffic going through our minds unbidden without engaging that traffic, without thinking, oh, I'm a miserable failure of a human being because I didn't do this. Oh God, I feel bad. And we gerbil wheel off. And so we notice, but don't engage. Oh, I just had a thought questioning whether I'm enough, whether I'm good enough. No need to engage it. There you are, thought. We come back to the breath. Now, the not very secret of our practice is when we're in the present moment, all of these thoughts, all of these triggers can't run the show. We're in the present moment, we're aware of our bodies, and we can have any one of a million weird thoughts that go through our minds. My mind, I can't speak for you, but I'd be surprised if that wasn't the case for everybody. And because we're in the present moment, those thoughts don't run the show. And that technique is both simple and brilliant because we can't force ourselves to stop those thoughts. I don't know much about martial arts, but they say, whoever they are, that with jujitsu, you use the momentum of your opponent to subdue them. It's not a blunt, brute force sort of thing. And that's kind of what we're doing with our thoughts. Oh, thoughts. Okay, they're just thoughts. And we're not trying to fight them off. We're not embracing them. Once we've stopped, and this stops us, at least for a moment, and we all know that it may not be more than a moment, but once we've stopped, we can start to notice specific kinds of thoughts that take us away from the present moment and away from harmony. For example, I'm going to go through a few of them now. We can start to notice our judging mind. If we're judging ourselves and others, how can we possibly be in harmony with ourselves and with others? So we notice, we don't engage, we notice the judging mind. Another habitual characteristic of our mind that we can notice is, and this is a little bit more subtle, I'm getting more subtle, but we can start to notice and become curious about our sometimes death grip on our false sense of self. That's to say, the belief, the delusion that we are freestanding beings disconnected from others and from the world at large. And if we could stop and record all the things that go through our minds, we would find that in some shape or form, most of the random thoughts that go through our minds are just that. It's this selfing, this taking ourselves away from the incredibly beautiful, powerful truth that we're all radically interconnected. Earlier, I think it was me, talked about, noticing that the food came, was the result of somebody's efforts, many people's efforts. There's the result of the sun, the wind, the rain, all that stuff. It was the person who grew the people who grew the food used tools that were created by still other people, that were driven to market by still other people, all of whom were creating all of this stuff. And I think undeniable truth is that no, we're all interconnected. We live in an interconnected world. We're each a knot in Indra's web, Indra's net. So we're all connected to each other. But when we separate ourselves out, and think we're freestanding, not only do we get lonely, not only do we get greedy, well, it's all about me, so I'm going to get what I want, but we lose touch with others and we can't feel in harmony with others. So we can notice these thoughts that arise from this delusion of the nature of self. Yeah, we got to pay our bills. We've got these bodies. Our bodies get old, get sick, and die. We have to, what was it Jack Kornfield said? Feel the ecstasy, but don't forget your social security number. They're both true. And, but when we lose track of that, harmony isn't possible. And that includes when we're doing things that are harmonious. If I'm walking through the woods and I'm thinking, aren't I cool? I'm walking through the woods. Where's the harmony in that? There is none. If I let go of that sense of self, then the way is open to feel one, blended with the woods. The Buddha taught, and all Buddhist teachers remind us that this selfing causes suffering because it separates us, and also because it's just not true. And if we buy into something that's not true, we suffer. Another common mental characteristic we can watch for and be curious about is clinging to thoughts about clinging to and chasing after what we crave. Boy, after this retreat, I can't wait. I'm going to Culver's and I'm going to get me a double butter burger. If ever there was a name for a piece of food that could induce a heart attack just by saying its name, it's a Butterburger. But we crave things because we have the delusion as separate people that what we crave will make us happy. And it's not what we crave typically that's the problem. If we're craving things, things are just things. It's the craving, it's the clinging, it's the running after. And that's why clinging and running after spiritual advancement is functionally no different than running after and craving a thing or a lot of money. So we can watch our minds after we've stopped enough to watch our minds and notice how much we crave things. And another form of craving is craving to get rid of things. It's the other side of the same coin. So that's a form of craving that's closely related to selfing. And another characteristic, and again, these are all handpicked in a basket for you, things that I thought would prevent us from feeling harmony. Another mental characteristic we can notice, and this is a big one in our world today, is clinging to views. Clinging to views has become so toxic in our world. I'm right, you're wrong, you're weak, you're a loser. I love how he adds a few O's in that word. You're a loser. I'd like to blame one side of the political spectrum for this, but let's be honest, we all do it. We other people. And that's one of the downsides of clinging to views. Thich Nhat Hanh speaks so powerfully and often about the harm that is caused in the world by clinging to views. And we can see this in our minds if we're watching. The 14 mindfulness trainings of Thich Nhat Hanh's Order of Interbeing are transmitted to people when they're ordained into the Order of Interbeing. There's a few of us in this room. And the second training is called Clinging to Views. And it begins, aware of the suffering created by attachment to views. We are committed. Notice, I love the way Thich Nhat Hanh frames things because he begins with aware of the suffering caused by. Aware of the suffering created by attachment to views, we're committed to learning and practicing non-attachment to views and being open to others' experiences and insights in order to benefit from the collective wisdom. We are aware that the knowledge we presently possess is not changeless, absolute truth. That's pretty big stuff. That's pretty powerful stuff. And if we cling to our views, you know, we're othering other people and we're selfing ourselves. Now, this isn't to say we shouldn't have views. This isn't to say that people who cause suffering get a buy. This isn't to say we shouldn't have boundaries and act accordingly, but also to hold our own views lightly. In one of the 14 mindfulness sayings, no beliefs, even Buddhist beliefs, are worth fighting and dying for. Amen to that. So views are good, views are normal. We couldn't stop them even if we wanted to, and I don't know why we'd want to. But as with craving, it's a clinging and insistence that we're right that separates us. And when we're separate, there's no harmony. So stopping in this way is foundational and to our practice. But the wise ones give us many other teachings and practices we can embrace that will foster harmony. And I'll take another one out of the handpicked basket, or another 4 out of the handpicked basket. That's the Brahmaviharas, our true homes. Now, one thing about the Brahmaviharas, it's a very powerful teaching. And the Buddha taught a lot that, especially in the ethical grouping of the Noble Eightfold Path, that he taught non-harm. And that's where the first precept comes from, essentially. The Buddha taught us to not harm people, that our words can cause harm, our attitudes can cause harm. So the Brahmaviharas are very much how we relate to other people, not just to not cause harm, but to foster our connection to them. And when we're connected, there is the likelihood of harmony. The Brahmaviharas are already within us. You don't have to learn too much about these. They're already within us, and our practice helps us bring them up and to live out of the Brahmaviharas. Our true homes are loving kindness, compassion, appreciative joy, and equanimity. The first one is loving kindness, metta. Many of you have done the metta practice, and this is what we're doing when we do the practice. When we practice, we wish all beings, no exceptions, even orange beings, to be healthy, happy, safe, and at ease in the world. Again, no exceptions. It's hard, isn't it? Metta can be a very difficult practice. And that's why we're really not trying to achieve something. It's not a prayer we want answered. It's an inclining of our own heart to feel this for all beings. And it includes beings we disagree with, even civil beings, people who act civilly who we disagree with. But remember, barbershop quartets aren't always singing the same note. People will disagree with us. There's even a slight possibility, very slight in my case, that I'm wrong. So we have to be open to wishing the best for everybody. And again, we don't practice metta to accomplish it, and this is true for all the Brahmaviharas. We practice metta to train ourselves, to incline our hearts, as Sharon Salzberg puts it, to offer these well wishes to others. Our second true home is compassion, karuna. This is, my working definition is, and there are a number of ways of looking at karuna, but it's the willing turning towards suffering in ourselves, in others, with our full, non-judgmental presence, and with the profound wish to alleviate that suffering to the extent possible. Every word in that sentence is important, to the extent, including to the extent possible. To be fully present to the suffering of others with an open and loving and non-judgmental heart. Compassion is not feeling that we have to suffer as much as others. That's exhausting, and it doesn't help anybody. But there's a bit of some people believe that, oh, that group or that person is suffering, I'm going to suffer too. It really is just being present. And that presence and that well-wishing is incredibly healing. In prison, being present to suffering, and there's no end of suffering in prison. I'm just so it's been a source of joy in my life for a long time that I can come to a gathering like this, and so many of us are going into prison, and including Stephen, Jan, any number of you here. And being present to suffering with calm compassion, an open, non-judgmental heart is one of our primary tasks. Yeah, we teach them to meditate and support them in their mindfulness practice. But when we're just present in the face of suffering, we're aspiring, and I think often succeeding, to let those prisoners know that they're humans worthy of love. And this is something that most of them didn't get a whole lot of before they were in prison. And I can pretty much guarantee you they're getting almost none of that while they're in prison. And very often the prisoners let us know that they're grateful that we can do that we can treat them as intelligent, grown, worthy adults who are worthy of compassion. Now, compassion can also mean supporting efforts to eliminate the causes and conditions that lead to suffering, which is why Thich Nhat Hanh always has said that compassion is a verb. For example, if we're able, we can seek to overcome the greed that has led to our climate crisis, or the systematic racism and classism and the incredibly baked-in flaws in our criminal justice system that funneled so many of these people that we see in prison into prison. So compassion is just such an important thing. And when we open our hearts with compassion, harmony is possible. The third Brahma Vihara is appreciative joy, mudita. And this, it doesn't mean running after our own joy. That would be craving and clinging in any case, but rather wishing that all people, again, even those we disagree with or don't like for whatever reason, that they have joy in their lives, not the joy of having things, but the joy of love and connection. The fourth Brahma Vihara is equanimity, upekkha. And this is the turning toward life as it is, within ourselves and in the world, without corrosive judgment. I'm using that word again, judgment, or clinging to our preference that things be this way or that. We'll always have preferences that things be this way or that. That's not changeable. But if we cling to them, again, it's the clinging that does the damage. So upekkha is a profound acceptance, what Tara Brach called in her book, Radical Acceptance, of what is without the suffering that comes when we tell ourselves stories about what is. So that gets to another heart of our practice that's worthy of a whole other retreat, that our practice is about teasing out, separating what's really happening from the stories we tell ourselves about what's happening. One is pain sometimes. Sometimes it's joy, really happens. Sometimes it's pain. The stories are add-ons that cause suffering. It's that difference between pain and suffering. Again, in the spirit of equanimity, we may wish to take skillful actions and change things as they are, if possible. I can be equanimous about social injustice and how it funneled all these African-American men into prison, but I can also support efforts to change that system. So that's another part, I think, of equanimity. My equanimity mantra is, I've got two variants of it. I've got a little mantra for equanimity. Just this. Just this. That is to say, this is happening. There's injustice in the world. My back hurts. And when I say just this, it reminds me not to add these stories on top of what is really happening. Because again, those stories aren't what's really happening. Those stories are just being generated by the conditioning in my mind. So just this, or if it's a long stream of just this, I'll sometimes say, now this, now this. And sometimes I'll even add a third word to now this, damn it. Because we don't have to like what's happening. And often we don't. When my health situation leads me to feel bad, which it does, I remind myself, just this, not woe is me, not why me, not I'm going to die, this is horrible. What will it be like to die? Oh my God, but just this. And it really makes a huge difference. A light example, Mary reminded me of this. On New Year's Eve, we get the Madison family together, kids and grandkids, to celebrate Mary's birthday on Christmas Eve, and a little bit of Christmas, a little bit of Hanukkah, a little bit of whatnot. So a few of you have met my wonderful dog, Sirius Black. And Sirius Black, with a house full of people, took it upon himself to swallow a ball about that big, swallow it whole, and then, when everybody was in the house, throw it up, which my somewhat OCD-ish brother-in-law stepped in. Now this. Just this. And thankfully, Mary's brother was also equanimous and took, but little things and big things. In the scheme of things, this wasn't such a big thing. But little things, big things, just this. Let it be. Real quickly, one other, this isn't a Brahma Vihara, but one other thing I think that can nurture harmony is gratitude. Gratitude is the antidote. Among its many virtues, gratitude is the antidote to selfing, to woe is meing. It brings us back to the present moment in which there are so many things to be grateful for, no matter what your circumstances. We talk about gratitude in prison. I mean, here are guys who are locked up, many of them for life, and they're talking about things they're grateful for. And it really helps nurture harmony in them. So far I've been talking about how we nurture gratitude in ourselves. But of course, as I mentioned before, what is the self? We're made up of all these other things, and we're also part of other groups. And anyone who's been in a group, a sangha, any kind of group really, knows that sometimes there's not harmony in these groups. Mary and I have this running gag that will come back from a group that we're involved in where everybody's acting in ways maybe we don't find easy to take. And one of us, it doesn't matter, we'll switch off on this. One of us will say, everybody in that group is meshuggah, which is Yiddish for crazy. Everybody in that group is meshuggah, and then we always put in a little pause for effect. And the other one of us says, and I'm not too sure about you. Groups can be unharmonious. And that's because groups, smaller groups I'm talking about now, I'll be talking about the world at large shortly, but smaller groups are made up of human beings. And human beings who are unharmonious are going to bring disharmony to groups. It's just the nature of things. And you put a bunch of unharmonious people together in a group, and it's what? Nerve-wracking, crazy-making, maddening, meshuggah-inducing. So what do we do about helping bring harmony to groups? I remember once I was on a retreat in Hanoi with Thich Nhat Hanh, and they asked us, Order of Interbeing people, to come up with topics for discussion groups. And everybody had wonderful topics like how to feel better in the world, how to bring joy to people we love. And then I raised my hand and I said, I'd like to have a group about how do we deal with disharmony in the Sangha. And that group, my group, was sold out. People from all over the world wanted to come, well, I'm in the Taiwan Sangha and it's just hell. It's just hell. I can't stand it. and so this is kind of a universal thing. So first, if our group can be, if our groups get unharmonious, let's not panic. These are humans and humans can be unharmonious. But we can practice using the practices I've already talked about to work on harmony in ourselves. And a lot of Buddhist teachers say, peace in ourselves, peace in the world. If we go into a group and we're unharmonious, chances are we'll cause disharmony. Thich Nhat Hanh tells a story that's germane. He talks about the boat people who, in a panic, left Vietnam in often leaky boats, sometimes no destination known or planned. And people would panic. There's a lot of perils. There are high seas, storms, pirates. And Thich Nhat Hanh said what was needed was in every boat, at least one calm person, the calm person in the boat, the harmonious person in the boat. And that person would then, the calm, the harmony would radiate out. And all of a sudden the boat could be more functional instead of a lot of people panicking. And like I said, the practices I've been describing can help each of us be that calm person in the boat, that calm person in the Sangha, the calm person in our book club, our calm person in any small group. Over the years, while he was alive, a large Sangha developed around the Buddha. And this won't surprise you after what I've been talking about, even the Buddha's Sangha was often not harmonious. Some people, academic types, believe that that's where the 5 precepts came from. The Buddha, I can just see the Buddha pulling his hair out. You know, all these guys are Meshuggah, or you know, that Meshuggah is the Pali word, right? And so he talked about it, particularly with his Sangha, his monastics. And in one talk to a group of monastics, the Buddha was very specific about how to foster harmony in the Sangha. He said, monks, there's 6 things that foster love and respect, helpfulness and agreement, harmony and unity. What 6? When one acts with love towards one's companions, when one speaks with love toward them, when one thinks with love towards them, when one shares with them without reservations, when one possesses virtues that are complete, unbroken, and freedom-giving, praised by the wise and conducive to concentration, and when one possesses with one's companions the understanding, the teachings, that is noble, leading to freedom, and which conduces to the complete destruction of suffering. Then, he said, there will be love and respect, helpfulness, agreement, harmony, and unity. So I think you can't force somebody to think and act that way. But especially in sanghas, you can really get people to practice. That's what sanghas do, right? And again, this doesn't mean that everybody in the group must be singing the same note, that everybody in the group must agree, but rather it refers to bringing those virtues the Buddha mentioned to the group, speaking, thinking, sharing with love, having virtues taught by the wise ones, and sharing the teachings of the wise ones. We can all do that even if we disagree on this or that. And that brings harmony. So if there's disharmony in your group, can you be the calm person in the group? Which can be difficult. I've tried it. It can be difficult. And encourage the group, if appropriate, to practice in ways that the wise ones have taught us. Okay, so I've talked about harmony in ourselves. I've talked about harmony in small groups. But how do we stay harmonious in this world of ours? There's so much mean-spiritedness, injustice, so much hatred and rage fueled by extreme fear. There's rampant bigotry and greed and systematic oppression. The fear and the rage have become part of our social discourse. Fear of losing privilege and power. There's fear of being diminished by others who used to be held down and who are justifiably rising up. Fear of losing control. Our practice can seem so hopeless, can't it? Like a drop of water, pouring a drop of water into the ocean. But the same principles, I believe, hold. That I talked about bringing harmony to ourselves and to groups. It's just bigger. That means it's more frustrating. It's that much more frustrating. It's that much, takes that much more time and patience. So we start with ourselves. If we're harmonious, that ripples out. This is, may seem like small help for so many huge problems. But if enough people act out of awareness that we're all connected, awareness that possessing and craving things won't make us or the world a better place, awareness that our judgmentalness separates us from others, a teeny bit at a time, the world will change. Thich Nhat Hanh famously once said, don't go to a peace rally unless you're feeling peaceful, because if you go to a peace rally and you're feeling anger and hate and fear, you're going to create more anger and hate and fear, even though the cause might be good. The path towards social harmony, as I mentioned, may seem hopeless. What is hopeless, I think, is thinking we can change the world by sheer force of will. Sheer force of will does almost nothing. It's because our conditioning runs so much deeper. How many times maybe we've all said, I'm going to eat less. I'm going to limit myself to 3 cookies. I'm just going to eat less. And then we see the cookies and we're all cookie monsters. So we can't do this with sheer force of will. It takes practice. It takes patience. It takes extreme patience. A handful of folks with strong practices won't change the world quickly, but a handful of folks with strong practices will attract others who wish to be harmonious. And that will attract more folks and more folks. So we let our own harmony ripple out from us in our actions. Harmonious groups, that energy ripples out. And slowly, very slowly, probably not in our lifetime, but slowly things change. I don't know any other way to do it. I mean, the habit energy that's causing the disharmony in the world is extraordinarily strong. But that doesn't mean it's hopeless. And the place to start is a little lower, right here, right in our own hearts. Now, there are many ways to do this, demonstrating, talking to legislators. For others of us, including quite a number of us in this room, that means working with those who've been trampled by injustice, by hatred. And that's why a number of us go into prison. And going into prison won't in itself change the horrible injustice baked into the criminal justice system, but we can help alleviate the suffering for folks who are trapped by that system. And that, in turn, makes prisons, which are so harsh, more humane. I've had staffers, a couple staffers at the maximum security prison I go into, say, this place is quieter since you've been here. We've been in this prison for 8 years, and it's a much more peaceful place, I'm told. And the prisoners tell us that too. And when the prisoners are released, if they're able, and it's hard to be released from prison, it's often harder than being in prison, because the deck is stacked against recently incarcerated individuals. But a number of them are able to bring that harmony into their communities. So again, it's rippling. If we all do a little bit, whether it's direct action to change the forces of inharmony or working with those who are suffering, if we all do a little bit when we're able, because some of us aren't able, some of us have kids and jobs, and we have to do that. But at some point, if you're able and inclined, every little bit makes a big difference in the world. And this rippling out is so essential. And the Buddha himself is a role model for this. You may have heard, it's kind of a famous story. True or not, I don't know, but you may have heard the story of Angulimala, who murdered 999 people, and he wanted the 1,000th person to be the Buddha. Angulimala means finger necklace because he'd cut off the finger, according to the story, of everyone he murdered, and he made a big necklace out of it. But when he encountered the Buddha on the path, the Buddha spoke with him, and Angulimala became a student of the Buddha and went on to become a renowned teacher, a man of peace. The Buddha saw the humanity even in a mass murderer. And those of us who go into prison know how powerful that is to all of a sudden realize that these folks who have committed very difficult crimes are filled with intelligence and humanity. And in many cases, they want to change that and bring peace to themselves. And this is why we practice. I grew up thinking that practicing was annoying and a waste of time. When I was 10 years old, I wanted to know how to play guitar so that I could play in a band, so that I'd be famous and people would love me. So simple when you're 10 years old, isn't it? Although I still kind of think that, but that was the craving I had at the time. So I nagged my parents until they bought me a $20 silver tone guitar from Sears, and they enrolled me in lessons. But after a couple of months of lessons, I got so impatient. I wanted to know how to play a guitar. I didn't want to learn and practice playing guitar. So logically enough, I quit and never learned to play the guitar. And it's the same with our practice. If we insist on attaining an end result of peace, justice, and harmony, the reality is it's the way we get there that is the power of this practice. It's not arriving at the destination. And in our practice, who knows when we'll arrive at the destination, or how many lifetimes, if you believe in that sort of thing, out will it be? It is doing this practice that leads us to harmony. So if you want harmony, practice. I promise you'll feel more harmony in the world. You'll create more harmony in the world. And we'll know this harmony when we feel it. And we will feel it. I'm feeling a good dose of it now. So thank you for listening.